This is a quick update on the Chrysler Outboard. But before I get to that, I will just make an explanation about the do not remove on Seagull engine. Someone asked me why did I take it off when it says clearly in the casting don't remove, and it's there for a very good reason. These engines didn't require decoking, they didn't require maintenance, and if run as they were meant to be run, would go for many years and didn't have to do anything to them. And this head, which is aluminium, and the block, which is cast iron, this block is 46 years old, and these are the water galleries within the block. And this is original. I have not cleaned out these galleries. That's to say, 46 years old. It's either been run in fresh water or it's been stood up to drain and backflush periodically, and that's why they've kept very clean. So there's no need to take the head off. So why have they gone to this great big bother of putting don't remove? Well, as I say, they're 50, 60, 70 years old now, and because they haven't been maintained in the past, these fill up and you don't get water flow. And it's an absolute last resort to take the head bolts out. Hence. So why is it so imperative not to? And the very last possible last chance saloon? Well, the bolts, which are BSF, which are not easy to get in the first place, go through the head. There's a copper gasket on this, and the actual bolts go through into the water galleries. If, in other words, you can look through there and see the end of the screwdriver. They go right through. So what happens is, this is fine in the design. It's not a design fault. They just didn't envisage them lasting this amount of time. But if they're not flushed out regularly and they're really bad, and here's a really bad one. It's all corroded and typical block rot. But it illustrates beautifully the point I'm trying to make is the bolts go through the head into the block, and they end up into the waterways, and they become, well, this corrodes and it's larger there than to come out. So consequently, what happens is people strip them. Okay, it's not complete dead disaster. It is possible, if you're very good, to drill out the root core of the bolt and re-tap it, but you've got to be damn good, because if you're not in the exact root of the bolt, being steel, and this cast, and this being aluminium, you're going to wander off into the softer material. So here's a quick explanation as to why don't remove means, unless you have to, don't remove. Okay, well, as I said, this is an update about the Chrysler Outboard. This is the first one I've ever come across, as I explained on my previous video, and I thought it's an interesting project, and I'm pleased I've got it. But it's a totally different ball game to the Seagull. The Seagulls are a doddle compared to this thing. It's well put together. I like the casting. It's a well built machine. I like the design of it, but absolutely no thought whatsoever has gone into working on it, on maintenance. It's just well built, and that is it. It's quite ridiculous. As I said, if you want to take this top off, you have to undo the filler cap, because it won't let the top come off. So they could have made a bigger hole around the top, or could have made a smaller filler cap. How ridiculous. So you've got to empty the thing of fuel, and then you can't get it away from the rest of it, because it's captive of the, unless you let that go. Oh, it's one thing holds something else, and you have to undo something to undo and get it something else. It's probably the worst outboard I've ever come across for working on. compared to the seagull, it's somewhat over-engineered, I suppose. Weight for weight wise, seagulls are they're far more basic, and I'm far more familiar with them. Anyway, this has been an interesting project, and when I first got it, I talked about the fact that someone had put in a dodgy spark plug, which was an added fault, which it isn't the reason it didn't go. I explained about the pipe, which had was completely blocked, and I pushed out a sort of a slug of absolute gunge out of it. Anyway, I replaced that pipe, and I got it running, but it was problematic, and on and off it would just simply cut or splatter or pop, or it wasn't nice. And I thought, well, it ought to be better than that, because, you know, I've seen videos where these are in the States and they're running quite nice. I thought, well, I don't see why this shouldn't, and everything else said it ought to be okay. It shouldn't be so touchy and iffy. So I decided to sort of investigate further, and in the course of messing around, I went to pull the fill cap off on, and it is ridiculously stiff, and I'm pulling away and it's sort of got all stiff. Anyway, I eventually took this out, and there was sort of some mess in the cap. I thought, well, I've already cleaned out the carb and everything else, but I didn't look at the actual cap, and I put an air hose on it, and I heard something go bing against the window. I didn't know whether it was an O-ring or what. I'm assuming it was a piece of crud. Anyway, I can blow through that and it operates okay now. Anyway, I thought, well, there's obviously been some horrible stuff within I'll reflush the tank again. So I put a few marbles in the tank, having taken all this off, and blocked up the end, and then shook it for 10 minutes with some marbles in there and some fill, and then poured it out into a clean dish. And this is the mess I found. It is certainly very sweet now, very pleased with it. Well, I didn't run it any faster than this. This is only a 6-foot boat, and well, I'm very pleased with it. It's behaving itself beautifully.